Hi guys, and welcome to my 13th tutorial on HTML and web structure, and in this tutorial I'm going to talk about nested statements in JavaScript. You already know how to create ifs and loops in JavaScript. Now you will learn how to combine those statements to create more advanced statements, let's say, or more statements which will allow you to put a bit of validations and user controls and stuff like this into more conditions, and as well as it will bring the programming of the page onto next level, you may say, with those type of controls, when you can nest a loop inside the next if statement or if statement inside your loop. So basically we'll use mostly the variables with if statements or with loops. So let me just declare a variable here. I'll have number, let's say, a simple variable which is equal 10, for example. And to nest the statement, we simply write, for example, we can start with if statement or with loop. For this matter, I will just start with for loop. At the beginning, let's say var I, let's say, equals not war, but like this. I equals, let's say, 0, not 10. I is less than 10, let's say, and I plus plus. So simple for loop. Now this is a simple for loop as you learned it in the previous tutorial. Now if you want to add an if statement, you of course can do this, and by simply just adding the if statement. So the loop now will just go around 10 times, but instead of printing out everything, it will also check the if statement which will be inside the loop. So I write simply an if statement with some kind of condition. Let's say if I is more than 5, then for example, not this one here, and so then for example say number is equal to number plus I, and then print it out, for example. So document dot write, and in this bracket we state number. So very simple thing, and that's how the nested loop will look like, nested loop with if statement. If I save this and I show you the output, which is F5, you will see no space here, but let me just add the space so you will see it clearly. BR. Now I'll save it and show you again with spaces. F5. So as you can see, now the number has been added to I and stored into number, and it's printed out only 4 times because the condition states the I must be more than 5. So only when I is more than 5, this will be printed and added. This will be calculated and this will be printed. So only if the counter of this for loop is more than 5, this action will happen. Otherwise, nothing will happen, and the loop will just do will go around a couple of times, doing nothing basically at the beginning because the counter is 0. So it will go around until the counter reaches 6, and then the if statement will be executed because the condition will be true. Now, of course, you can add more if statements, and even inside this if statement, you can add another if statement. So I can say if now I is more than, let's say, 8, I can add another action. So for example, now I have 2 if statements built in for loop. Now I can add, for example, again I can do something like this and simply again print it out. So something like this. It is valid. It's pretty much you can add many more of those statements. It's not limited to just nesting those 2, for example, or this way. You can also add in if statement. You can add loop, as I said at the beginning. But the main thing is that this is, let's call it like, this is the main node. Let's say this is main node. This is main action or main statement, or like this main statement. Then you have a substatement, and substatement of that substatement. So if you build more of those, you get a hierarchy of those statements, and like a tree, for example. Sort of, it's not basically like a tree, it's sort of, you may say, like a tree structure. So this one has a child and this one has a child, and so on. So you can add more of those statements. Of course, it's not limited to just one or just one type of those. You can add while loop inside this for if. You can add a while loop here. You can add another if. You can instead of doing it here, you can just do it below, and this if statement will have two if statements, and so on. You can add else, else if, while loop, do while, and so on. So this is how you nest your statements. If I save this and show you the output, now the output will be a bit different. Now, because I print out this 5 numbers, because I print out the value, this value, I print out only when the I is more than 8. So it's 9. So only once it will be printed with this counter, with this condition. So of course this one is printed 4 times as usual, but this one is only printed once because the condition says it must be over 8. So it must be more than 8 for it to be executed. Now that's how you can nest your statements. Of course, this is not limited to that kind of structure. As I said, you can also have an if statement, which I will show you in a minute. Let me just copy this, break it here. You can also have, as I said, an if statement. So for example, if number is let's say equal 10, then do something like this. So for loop now. Oh well, let's use different one words. While. Let's use while loop, and I will simply say while, also I have to have some kind of variable, probably another one, so let's have var and num2, let's call it num2 equals 0, and basically I will use, say, do it while num2 is less than 10. I will of course subtract from the number, or add. You can say like this, or you can say number, because it's still the same thing. It's 10. That's what I meant to do. So do it while number 2 is less than number. Number 2 is basically 0 now, and number is 10. So I have to add some kind of counter. Let's just do this without the I. I will just change it in a minute. And instead of this, I will just num2, and I will have to add a counter, which is basically number minus minus, and because number minus minus, because I will count down, or num2 plus plus I can do. Doesn't matter which way I go, actually, it will still work. I can choose it like this. Okay, let me just leave it like this with number minus minus, and I will display this for you. Doesn't for some reason doesn't want to, not JavaScript, for some reason doesn't want to number equals 10. Maybe because change the number. It's more than, okay, now this should work. Alright, so as you can see, it printed out a couple of more than times. Then because I didn't set the number, I forgot to zero the number. I'll make it 10 again because I looked at this value here, but the value of the number changing in this loop, in this if statement, in this loop. So I didn't actually change the number back to 10, and therefore that's why compared to equal sign didn't work. This was never executed. That's why it didn't work. And I changed it to more than or equal, and as you can see, it's a couple of numbers, quite a list, and basically it will, as you can see, count down till 1. So that's how you can nest your statements. Basically, you already know how to build your conditions, and how to build the loops and stuff like this. Therefore, I'm not gonna go into much details about those. I just wanted to show you how you can nest those statements to get, as you can see, proper conditions and proper validations for your codes. So, for example, now where you can use it in password, for example, if you have a password, you can check first if the field which user inputted, for example, the text box, isn't empty. So you can check that. If it's not empty, then you can say another statement here. For example, if, again, inside this if, so if it's less than, for example, 10 characters or something like this, another validation. And if it's not, then check another if, and so on. So this is how you can use basically your nested statements. As well as, as I said, you can nest the same statements and different statements, such as loops and ifs. So that's pretty much how this looks like from the perspective of JavaScript and pretty much other programmings as well, programming languages as well. The same type of thing applies if you know other programming languages like Java or C++. Pretty much the same thing applies, and the syntax pretty much is the same even, and that's how you do it. So this is the end of this tutorial. My next tutorial will be about probably about arrays. So I will teach you how to create arrays and what array is, and it's getting a bit more interesting from now on, as I will go to expanded concepts and more about now we will go to objects, more stuff to do with objects, functions and stuff like this. So more useful stuff you will learn in future tutorials. And this is the end of the tutorial. Just visit my webpage if you want, or YouTube channel for more tutorials. If you like my videos, subscribe on the channel, all my videos, and I will see you in my next tutorial, and bye till then.